Hi guys, and welcome back to the Family Fudge. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 5 of my family's favorite freezer meals. So freezer meals. I always start by finding the recipes that I want to use and figuring out how many of those I'm going to make. Now for my size freezer, I can't make a ton of freezer meals, but it is nice to have some in there for backups or busy nights, things like that. Then I make sure that I have all of my containers ready to go. Now sometimes I will schedule out an afternoon where I will throw together as many meals all at once as possible. Another way that I like to freezer cook is to make whatever dinner that I'm going to make that night, but double or triple it. And then I will freeze the other meals for later. So with these recipes I'm gonna share with you today, you could do either or. You could make them all in one day, or you can make them one at a time. It's up to you. The first meal I'm gonna be making, I like to call sloppy tot casserole, which is basically like a tater tot casserole and sloppy joes combined. Here's what you're going to need. About 1 to 1.5 pounds of ground meat. I'm gonna be using turkey, but you could also use beef. Half of this large onion, 1 cup of tomato sauce, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, 2 tablespoons of ketchup, 2 tablespoons of mustard, 1 whole can of kidney beans, about a cup of shredded cheese, a regular size bag of tater tots, 2 to 3 cloves of garlic, and finally salt and pepper to taste. In a large skillet, I'm going to brown my turkey. I'm gonna add my onions, my crushed up garlic, and salt and pepper. Then I'm going to add my tomato sauce, ketchup, mustard. Next comes my drained kidney beans, and mix it well. My Worcestershire sauce, give it a taste for seasoning. I'm gonna grab my casserole dish, spray my pan just so it doesn't stick. Put all the meat mixture into your pan. Top it with your tater tots, as many as you can fit. If you want to make it fancy, you can arrange them, or I'm just going to dump them on. Next comes the cheese. At least 1 cup or more if you really like it cheesy. To place this in the freezer, you're going to want to go ahead and let it cool down. I'm going to wrap mine in some plastic wrap first and then aluminum foil. To reheat this meal, I'm going to pull it out, hopefully the night before, and let it defrost in the fridge. Then when it's close to dinner time, I'm gonna pop it in the oven, 350 for about 30 to 45 minutes. Because everything's actually already cooked except for the potatoes, so we just need to make sure that those are crispy. Next up is chicken Parmesan casserole. I'm gonna start with about 1 pound of chicken thighs. These are boneless and skinless. I'm just gonna chop them up. You need 1 whole jar of your favorite pasta sauce, about half a cup of shredded Parmesan cheese, about 1.5 cups of shredded mozzarella, 1 cup of your favorite breadcrumbs. We're gonna brown our chicken in some olive oil, about a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, and then I'm gonna throw in about a handful or 2 of spinach. Totally optional. So after my chicken is all cut up, I'm gonna add it to my skillet with a little bit of olive oil. I'm also gonna add my salt and pepper to taste, and about a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. When the chicken is almost done, I'm gonna throw in my spinach. Next, I'm gonna prepare my casserole dish. I've already washed and dried it, but I'm going to use some cooking spray to make sure things don't stick. Now on top of the chicken, I'm going to dump my entire jar of pasta sauce. And then both of the cheeses, the Parmesan and the mozzarella. Then I'm gonna take my breadcrumbs and toss them in about a tablespoon of olive oil. And then I'm gonna sprinkle that on top of my casserole. Now to freeze this, I'm gonna let it all cool down. I'm gonna put a layer of plastic wrap and then a layer of foil on top. I'm gonna add my cooking instructions. When I wanna make this, I'm gonna pull it out of the freezer, hopefully the night before, and let it defrost in the fridge. Because the chicken's fully cooked, it's not gonna take very long in the oven at all. Probably 350 for about 20 minutes. I like to call this next recipe Shepherd's Pie Supreme. I'm gonna start with 1.5 pounds of ground turkey. I'm also going to be using about half of a medium-sized onion, finely diced, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, 2 tablespoons of ketchup, half a teaspoon of sage, this is dried sage, about 3 cloves of garlic that have been crushed, about 1½ cups of cheddar cheese, salt and pepper to taste, and your basic mashed potatoes. You could use leftover potatoes, you could use instant, whichever you prefer. So part of the thing that makes this shepherd's pie supreme is that you're gonna start with really good mashed potatoes. So here I have just a plain, regular mashed potatoes. I just added salt to them, nothing else. I'm gonna go ahead and add about a tablespoon of butter and about a 1/4 cup of milk. Our potatoes are nice and creamy. We're gonna go ahead and set those aside. And I'm gonna brown up my turkey with some onions. And when it's almost done, I'm gonna throw in my garlic. I've added some coconut oil to my pan so that my turkey doesn't stick. In goes our garlic, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, 2 tablespoons of ketchup, half a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and half a teaspoon of dried sage. I love the smell of dried sage. It reminds me of Thanksgiving. So I just gave it a taste, and I think I'm gonna add just a little bit more ketchup. Time to start layering up our supreme shepherd's pie. I started with a clean and dry aluminum pan, and then I gave it just a light spraying of coconut oil just so it doesn't stick. And as you can see, there are no other vegetables in this dish because I plan on serving a side salad or maybe some steamed broccoli instead with this dinner and not actually in the dish. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by taking half of my meat mixture and putting it in the bottom of our pan. We're gonna be layering this, kind of like a shepherd's pie lasagna. Certainly, if you don't wanna layer it, you could just throw it all in the pan, and that'd be totally fine. But I think layering it like this kind of makes it more supreme. Okay, then I'm gonna take half of my potatoes and put it on my meat. And then half of my cheese. Definitely what makes us supreme. Now the rest of my meat, the rest of my potatoes. And I'm gonna gently spread that out. All right, time to top it with the remaining cheese. Probably one of the reasons that all of these dishes are family favorites is because they all have cheese, and everybody in my family loves cheese. All right, time to wrap it up. Now, just like all of my freezer casseroles, I'm gonna put a layer of saran wrap to keep the air out. You just wanna be sure to remove this before you pop it in the oven. Don't forget. And then my layer of foil. Now to reheat my shepherd's pie, I can either take it out of the freezer the night before, let it defrost in the fridge, or I can actually just stick in the oven right from the freezer. It'll take a little bit longer that way, but probably just about 30 to 45 minutes will do. Then oven at 350. Next, I'm gonna be making beefy bean and cheese burrito casserole. I'm using about a pound of ground beef. You could also use turkey. Some tortillas. I'm gonna use corn, but you could also use flour. 1 can of pinto beans. I'm gonna be topping the casserole with some Mexican blended cheese and some cheddar cheese. I'm also gonna be using some taco seasoning, some sour cream, and some salsa. In a large skillet, I'm gonna start by browning my beef. If you're not using a lean ground beef, you may want to drain the excess oil. Next, I'm gonna add my pinto bean. Then I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of taco seasoning. Once that's done, I'm gonna prepare my casserole dish. I've already washed and dried it. Then I'm gonna give my pan a light coating of nonstick spray. I'm gonna put a layer of tortillas on the bottom, and then I'm going to add to that my beef and bean mixture. On goes another layer of tortillas. Then, in a separate bowl, I'm going to take 1/2 cup of sour cream and about 1/2 cup of salsa and mix the two together. I'm going to spread this on the top of my casserole. Then comes the cheese. I'm going to use a good amount of Mexican blended cheese and mild cheddar cheese. And that's it. To freeze this, I'm going to put a layer of saran wrap and then a layer of foil. I'm gonna be sure to write my instructions on the top. I'm gonna bake this in a 350-degree oven for about 25 to 30 minutes or until the cheese is nice and browned. The last freezer meal today is actually going to be a brinner, a breakfast for dinner inspired casserole. But we often will have breakfast for dinner around here because we have our own chickens that lay us these beautiful eggs. And so we sometimes have a lot of eggs on hand. And that's a great opportunity to throw in whatever else you have and make a breakfast casserole. I'm gonna be using some leftover holiday ham. I'm gonna cube that up. This is about 2 cups. The last of my spinach. This is about just a cup of spinach. And I'm just gonna, oh, my oven's ready. I'm just gonna tear it into small pieces. I like to get the big bag of tater tots from Costco because it's really cheap. But what I'll do when I get home is just divide it into bags. And then I have a 1/4 cup of milk. And this is about 2 cups of cheddar cheese. You can use whatever cheese you prefer, and you could use extra cheese if you really like it. And then of course we have some salt and pepper to taste. So pretty simple on this one. Time to get cracking. To my eggs, I'm going to be adding a 1/3 cup of whole milk and some salt and pepper. This is to your taste, of course, but I'm going to go ahead and put 1/2 teaspoon of salt and about a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. And then I'm going to whisk that up really well. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. Next, I'm going to chop up my ham. Okay, time to assemble this breakfast casserole. Now I have my clean and dry aluminum pan. Now this time I'm going to be sure to spray this really well with my nonstick spray because these eggs will definitely want to stick. So I'm going to spray it really well. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is put all my tater tots at the bottom. Now, if you don't want to use tater tots, you could use hash browns, the shredded kind or the cubed kind would be totally fine. Now to this, I'm going to add my spinach. There. This is really fast from here on out. Then all of my cubed ham. This is a great way to use your leftover holiday ham. Now I'm going to pour my eggs over the top. Did I mention that this was a dozen eggs? I'm not sure if I did, but this is a whole dozen eggs. And then the cheese. With this casserole, we actually have to cook it, fully cook it before we freeze it. We definitely don't want to freeze it as is. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take some foil and cover it. That's going to make sure that the eggs get cooked all the way before the cheese on the top will burn. Now I'm going to stick this in my preheated to 350-degree oven for about 30 minutes. Then I'm going to remove the top and let the cheese get browned. And then to freeze it, you just want to let it cool completely and then wrap it like you normally would with the plastic wrap first and then the aluminum foil, and then you can freeze it. To reheat it, I would definitely take it out of the freezer the night before and then just quickly reheat it in your oven in the morning. When you want to reheat it in the morning, it'll probably just take about 10 minutes at 350. Or you could even microwave it. If you take it out of the